One of the most difficult aspects of being a seafarer is crossing through rough seas. It doesn't happen every day, but it is an ever-present threat looming over the horizon. Since the early days when man first discovered seafaring, rough seas have always been a danger to ships. Although modern vessels can now reasonably withstand its effects, passing through rough seas still presents the same hazards today as it did thousands of years ago. I have been working on board ships for more than 20 years now, and if there is one thing that I really hate about this job is whenever our ship passes through heavy weather and encounters rough sea. I mean, yeah, sure, it's part and parcel of our profession, and there's this cheesy saying that old timers used to say that calm seas never made good sailors. Well, maybe that was applicable back then in the old days, but in this day and age where safety of life at sea is a priority, to be honest, I'd rather not be called a good sailor if it means always passing through rough seas. You see, some people might romanticize that, oh, this is the life of a sailor passing through rough seas, the adventure and all. But the thing is, whenever a ship passes through rough seas, it poses a real threat to the ship and the crew. There is a risk of the ship capsizing and getting damaged. And in case that sort of thing really happens, during heavy weather, say in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, realistically speaking, no one's going to get there in time to rescue you. Meaning that if any incident happens while the ship is in rough seas, there's a very big chance that the crew will not make it. Since passing through heavy weather is more or less unavoidable, countermeasures have been designed to reduce the effects of rough sea on ships. At the moment, we're filling up the number 4 cargo hold with seawater to act as an extra ballast tank. The purpose of that is to get our freeboard a little bit lower so that our ship could move easier in case there is rough sea. On board ships, you will normally see furniture, equipment, and appliances secured either by lashing or braces, or sometimes even bolted to the wall. Obviously, this is to protect them from flying around when the ship starts rolling. During my first voyage back when I was a cadet, even the slightest rolling made me seasick and run for the nearest bathroom to throw up. Over the years, I've gotten used to it, and nowadays, a little rolling or pitching is nothing more than a slight inconvenience. If the ship's movement continued just like this for the rest of our passage, things will be smooth, just like a walk in the... Okay, that was intense. Well, I guess smooth sailing was just too much to hope for when your ship is passing through the Pacific Ocean in the middle of winter. It's 2 o'clock in the morning, and the weather has turned quite worse. Our ship is getting tossed around. and my room is quite a mess right now. So during times like these when the ship is passing through heavy weather and rough seas, it's very difficult to fall asleep. Well, partly because you get tossed around when you're lying in bed. But for me, actually, to be honest, I'm a little bit afraid during times like these. So I prefer to just stay awake and keep alert just in case an emergency happens. As you can see, my room is quite a mess right now, and I didn't bother to fix things because they're going to get screwed up again. So I'll just wait until the weather clears before I rearrange my cabin again. Want to see something cool? Even though this kind of situation scared me, I always found it useless to dwell too much on fear. For me, it's always better to keep calm and manage a bit of a smile, even during the toughest of times. Last night was very brutal, but thankfully around 5:30 in the morning, the sea calmed down a little bit. So the vessel was still rolling, but it was manageable already, and it's not really very scary anymore. So I managed to get some sleep. As of now, the sea is still quite rough, but it's not as bad as last night. But according to the forecast, the weather will still be bad today. I don't know if it's going to be as bad as it was last night. Hopefully not. So it's during these times when the vessel passes through rough sea, heavy weather, and experiences extreme rolling, pitching, things flying around, that really presents a big challenge to us seafarers, because it's not only uncomfortable, but it's also actually very scary, especially if your ship is crossing the Pacific in the middle of winter during rough seas. If something happens to the ship which forces the crew to abandon the ship, the chances of survival are very, very slim. Rough seas cause the ship to either roll or pitch, or sometimes a combination of both. And depending on the intensity of the wind and waves, the angle of these motions could oftentimes become extreme. This is when the crew starts getting seasickness, and to some extent, feel demoralized, the severity of which depends on their individual fortitude.
Ano nasa isip mo nung maalon na gabi?
Magninegosyo na lang ako, sir.
Negosyo na lang, sir. Magnegosyo na lang, sir, sa atin.
Muna umuwi, sir.
Lababo, sir. Susuka na, sir.
Sometimes it even gets difficult to eat and keep the food down in your stomach. On board ships with Filipino crew, the chief cook usually prepares arroz caldo in these situations. It is basically chicken and rice porridge, and is one of the most popular comfort foods in the Philippines. So just real talk here. If it were up to me, I'd rather not pass through rough seas. But this is an inevitability whenever you are working on board ships. It is by far the hazard that is most likely and most probable to happen. So it takes a certain kind of courage to know that whenever you board a ship and work at sea, you're going to have to expect to get tossed around at least once or twice during your contract. Well, today at least the sun is shining, but the sea is still rough. Let's hope it gets better today. Eventually, the wind subsided and the water started to calm down. The sun finally peeked through the clouds, offering a ray of hope. that from here on, things will get better. Heavy weather, rough seas, and all the danger that comes with it. These are but a few examples of what seafarers usually face every time they work on board a ship. But even knowing about this and expecting the dangers that come with it, they still willingly sign up contract after contract. Because for them, the sacrifice that they make is still worth it if it means providing a good life, not just for themselves, but also for their family.